Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called Discover Your Vagus Nerve as an Energetic Healing Pathway to Optimal Well-Being. My name is Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really grateful that we're entering into this deep dive today with a remarkable teacher. Her name is Melanie Smith. She's an Eden Energy Medicine advanced practitioner and a doctor of Oriental medicine. And the subject of the vagus nerve is really getting a lot of attention these days because it's so central to a lot of our healing processes. And we're going to get a very unique vantage point drawing from energy medicine, Oriental medicine, in a way that really gives you some concrete practices to harness the power of this to reduce stress and for your optimal well-being. So with that said, it's a joy and pleasure to introduce you to Melanie. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Well, I want to let everyone know up front that we are going to have this hour with Melanie. We're going to get as much value as we can, and we're going to have a chance to go much deeper and really put all this great theory into practice with an upcoming full course and program. So more about that towards the end of the hour. So Melanie, let's start with a little bit of your personal backstory. I always find it's useful to understand what propelled you to commit your life to the work you're bringing forward right now.
25 years ago, I had a healing crisis, and it was what would seem like a simple fall, but the injury was impacting my lumbar vertebrae. I dislocated a knee, the vertebrae impinged a nerve, and I ended up with a very severe case of shingles. And I've often felt that if I wasn't in a fast-paced environment in the corporate world, working 24/7, 7 days a week, my immune system, my body would have probably handled that process differently. But it wasn't the case, and my nervous system responded and just began to break down. And unfortunately, traditional medicine kept making it worse. I had a severe reaction to a misprescribed medication, and I went to the emergency room. They didn't do anything. I go to a second emergency room. I end up in the hospital, and I nearly died. I was literally shutting down in every way. But the big piece was pain management. I was if the AC kicked on, I was in pain. If clothes touched my body, I was in pain. If I laughed, I was in pain. If I cried, I was in pain. So basically, I was in pain. And the pain management that they offered, I ended up with accidentally receiving a spinal tap, which left me with migraines. So that layered on top of everything else, as well as other neurological issues. The first session, I was paralyzed from the waist down for more than 2 weeks. I did not know if that was temporary or permanent. So after dealing with this for some time, I got the message that this all has happened for a reason. And it's important for me to look at making changes in my life, my health, my lifestyle, but also making bigger changes. So I literally changed my profession. I moved from my home for my whole life. And I started looking at alternative therapies during that time. And as I got more into those and found those were healing and helpful, then I realized I got a calling that this all happened for me to go into this profession. So I did that. I left everything. I sold my home. I gave things away. I literally became a vagabond for a year, and I traveled around focusing on my health, on spending time in nature, on not working, on de-stressing, eating quality foods. And I turned to alternative healing methods as well as various healers around the country. And I kept getting better and better and stronger and stronger. And so as I did that, the clarity was part of my search was to find schools, to find a new place to live. And I did that. I started with massage and body work to get a good foundation of anatomy. I studied cranial sacral therapy, shiatsu, touch for health, Reiki, you name it, lots and lots of body work practices. But I knew that was a foundation, a stepping stone to something else. And so I went back to school and studied acupuncture and Oriental medicine. And so for the past, 20 years almost, I have been incorporating all of those modalities, including sound healing, in my practice, as well as working online remotely with people around the world. And a big passion of mine is teaching. And so one of the interesting pieces was during the time I was just finishing my board exams with acupuncture, and I was invited to an event with a friend, and I end up, the funny thing is, I'm taking the friend to the airport that day because her dad has a stroke. So I'm at the event running a booth for a friend that I did not really have time to be at. And people kept telling me, you must be so excited about this event, this energy medicine practitioner. And it was Donna Eden, and I'd never heard of her. And I ended up getting a free ticket. I'm sitting at the event, and at the intermission, the woman who coordinates events came up to me and said, I really need your help. And I said, with what? What can I do? And she said, I have a box here with 200 plus names in it. And the presenters are suggesting a study group, that someone take their information and share it with the local community. Well, everything in my mind was saying, I don't have time. No, no, no. I finally said yes. And we coordinated it. I showed up for the first class. There were 187 people there, and I taught that class for 7 years. And about 3 or 4 months into it, Donna and David contacted me and said, we really want you to join us and be on our teaching faculty. And so for the past 20 years, I've been teaching everything they offer, and I've also been teaching my own energy mastery classes. And I just love teaching and sharing and getting the word out with people.
Well, it's quite a journey you've been on, and there's something about the wounded healer, too, to be in that kind of pain that propelled you into this holistic body of work. So let's talk a little bit about the vagus nerve, which is really the focus of today's call. So it's getting a lot of press these days. A lot of people, see buzz around it. But, why is there so much interest in the vagus nerve, particularly from an energetic perspective and being able to regulate our whole system?
Well, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. It's getting a lot of buzz. I've been working with the vagus nerve now for several years, and what was interesting is with the past year and a half, I should say, with the pandemic, it became even more relevant on my radar because it absolutely had impacted people in a lot of different ways. People, for the first time in a long time, or maybe their entire life, they found themselves isolated. They found themselves closed off, not connected to friends and family. So they didn't have that touch element. And with touch and with community and connection, we get oxytocin. It's a hormone. It's that feel-good love cuddle hormone, and it happens with just touch. I mean, we get it with handshakes, we get it with hugs, but we just get it in community, patting someone on the back of the shoulder. So what happened is people started shutting down. They're literally isolated. They're in a high fear mode because it was a pandemic. It was serious, and it's still going on, unfortunately. But the other thing that happened is when people were allowed to step out into the world in any way, even though it was a new and more limited way, everyone's wearing a mask. Well, the vagus nerve it's amazing. I'm going to talk more about it in just a minute. But one of the things it does is it comes in and governs our facial muscles. That's how we get social cues. That's how we learn about safety. So, we were missing a lot of social cues for people. And one of the most interesting things was one of my great nephews started kindergarten this year wearing a mask the entire time. My nephew and his wife never got to meet the teacher. Every child's experience in that first really, important time, they didn't get social cues. Does that kid like me? How are we doing? No smiling, what's happening under the mask? But it was also happening out in the world. And so that was a big, big thing. And when you think about what the vagus nerve impacts, it's about trauma. It's about not feeling safe. It's about stress of all kinds. But it's also about irregular heart rate, high blood pressure, tinnitus, hearing loss, fainting. Some people have vasovagal response and they will faint from various, reasons. Epilepsy, snoring, shallow breathing, poor sleep at night. It even is involved in TMJ and teeth grinding and headaches and muscle tension and things like that, pain of all kinds, especially neck, but also digestive issues. It affects our gut health. So what's interesting about the cranial nerve, it's cranial nerve 10 is the vagus nerve. We have a number of cranial nerves, and they have lots of different functions. Some of them are about allowing your eyes to make all those interesting movements. But the vagus nerve is unique. In fact, I call it magical because it's different than any other nerve, any other cranial nerve in the body. And the Latin for it is the wanderer. And that's what it does. It wanders around our body. It actually is part of our parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll go deeper later about the nervous system and the parts, but it falls under that parasympathetic, which is that rest, restore, relax, which sits opposite of what most of us know stress as, which is that fight or flight. And what happens is it comes out from the brain stem, the back of the brain. It comes around along the side of the neck. It actually comes up behind the ear, into the ear, around into the jaw, the facial muscles, and then it continues on down into the throat. Like the vocal cords, for example, the tongue, those are all responding to what sensory signal is the vagus nerve sending. It also innervates every gland and every organ. So it comes right on down along the throat into the thyroid gland. And then it comes down further to the thymus gland and into your lungs and the heart. And guess what? It keeps on going. It travels down to the liver, to the stomach, to the digestive organs until it gets down into the lower gut, which is small intestine and large intestine. And then the really unique thing about the vagus nerve is it makes a loop. So it sends signals from the brain down through every organ, down to the lower gut. And then it makes a loop and sends information back to the brain. And what's amazing about that is from the brain down is 20% of the signal. But most of the signal, 80%, is from the gut back to the brain. So you can see why it's important to have the vagus nerve working properly and supporting us because of that signal of information. If someone, for example, has a bacterial overgrowth in their small intestine. Well, small intestine is where we make serotonin. So if people are depressed, they may not be getting their natural amount of serotonin. And so what happens is, if that's not being produced, that serotonin can't ride on the vagus nerve back up to the brain. So it's fascinating in how many things it's involved in and how it intertwines with most everything, actually.
And so maybe share a little bit about how does it become dysregulated, or what is it that begins to create negative feedback loops in the vagus nerve?
So that's a really great question, Stephen, and it can happen from lots of different things. So think stressful events and trauma. Scenarios where we're not feeling safe. And that can be anything from a birth trauma to a growing up in a household where there were drugs, alcohol, addictive behavior. Maybe there was physical or mental abuse happening. So what happens is in those kinds of situations, then we are on constant alert. And when a person's on constant alert, it means the fight or flight mechanism is really, really strong. And that's an energy system we refer to as triple warmer in Oriental medicine. It's the fight, flight, freeze, flee. And what happens is the stronger that is, then the more suffocated the vagus nerve becomes, the more suffocated the parasympathetic nervous system and the rest, restore, relax response. In fact, for myself, I came in after my mom was in labor for 3 days, cord wrapped around my neck. A doctor finally showed up and they did a C-section. So when we don't go through a normal natural birth through the birth canal, there's trauma, certainly to the mother and the child going through those kinds of experiences. Or at birth, if there's something going on with the baby, that's a traumatic experience. And so it can be anything from birth to, later in life where we've all been dealing with a pandemic. That's been very traumatic and stressful. It could be that you're living in a community, an environment where you don't feel safe. It's not safe for you to drive and be out at night. It's not safe for you to walk alone on the streets, maybe. Maybe there's gunfire in your neighborhood on a regular basis, and that's the world you've grown up in. And there's lots of variations to those kinds of themes, whether someone's in a country where there's war happening or unrest. And all of those things, when they activate that sympathetic nervous system and it makes it stronger fight or flight, the vagus nerve shuts down. When the vagus nerve shuts down, then it's difficult to regulate your heart rate variability. It's difficult for breathing, breathing properly. People may be breathing shallow. It's difficult to, be happy and in that radiant circuit mode because you're in this constant alert mode, surveying your territory and your area. So the vagus nerve just gets squelched more and more that it's in those kinds of environments.
And how do these kind of experiences that squelch it kind of lodge in your system as sort of longer term trauma?
Well, what happens is we store information cellularly in our body. So we store all the traumatic events. We store whatever it is we've been exposed to. It's all stored cellularly. So when you think about that, it can affect a person's neurological response. It can affect the liver, for example, has to process and detox everything. It can affect absolutely anything. And what happens is it's a matter of finding that connection and again, balancing. Like one of the things I like to share when you think about if your nervous system is up here in a fight or flight mode and it's constant. So whether someone was physically abused or sexually abused as a child or as an adult, it's like I'm surveying, I'm on alert up here. Everything else starts to come down. So it impedes our immune system. It impedes our neurological function. Lots of other things close down. Our digestion shuts off because all of our energy has to go to that alert mode.
Fascinating. So let's talk about then how do you then to get it back into a state of regulation to sort of essentially use energy medicine to start to rebalance the vagus nerve?
Yes, the great thing, the beauty of energy medicine is it's self-care. So you can take simple tools and techniques, and guess what? You can do them on yourself, and that's the way I'll be demonstrating and sharing with you today. But you know what? You can share these with your children. Children going to school, and I have a lot of patients I've worked with where their kids have been homeschooled, and then they went back to school briefly, and then they're back homeschooled, so they're not doing their activities and events and community with other kids. So you can share these techniques with your children, with your partner. You can share it with family, with friends. And if you're a practitioner of any type, whether it's a psychotherapist or some type of body worker, an acupuncturist, or anyone, you can easily bring these practices into your own practice, and you can share them with your clients, and they can have takeaway. And what's great is the sooner you recognize there's a stress, the easier it is to turn it around. So something that I always say, if someone is in an auto accident and it's not bad enough to go to the hospital, they call me up, maybe they have whiplash, or certainly they have stress, they have shock, most likely. The sooner I can work with them, the easier it is to unravel that and turn it around. But when someone calls me up and they've had a lifetime of accumulating stressors of events that I've shared, of surgeries, of health conditions, of maybe multiple automobile accidents or other traumas, loss of loved ones early in their life, it takes a longer time to unravel. So it's really the sooner we can get to it, then it will begin to work and things will begin to calm and they'll come back to balance. So when we have this going on, it's like a fever. When a fever rises, it has to go all the way to the top and break to come back to neutral. And so as this goes up, this goes down. So the more we can calm and reduce the stressors and bring that down, and the more we can work to fortify the vagus nerve and bring this up, then guess what? We're back to that place of calm and a neutral position. And it makes it easier to work through life, to handle whatever's coming up, and not to take it on and let it embed and become a deeply rooted pattern.
Hmm. So I'd love for you to, I know you have a couple of different exercises you wanted to guide us in to give us some really concrete things we can move forward with from this call. So you want to guide folks in the first one?
Yes, I would love to. So this is an easy exercise that you can do to talk directly to the vagus nerve so the parasympathetic nervous system, but also at the same time talk to the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. And so we're going to take your right hand and tuck it around your throat so that the middle finger is tucked behind your earlobe. There's a point there, an acupuncture point there, triple warmer 17, but I call it the vagus gateway or the vagus hole because when you see an image of where the vagus nerve passes along, it passes right through there. And so your finger is literally resting right over that area. And in doing so, my fingers are over my jaw, covering my neck, my throat. So that's the first position. That's our parasympathetic gateway to talk to the vagus nerve. And with your other hand, just take the left hand and place it gently on your forehead. On the forehead, when we are stressed, when stress of any kind comes to us, blood leaves our forebrain. And when that happens, we cannot think clearly. We can't easily make decisions. So let's just come to center here and focus on your breath, holding these two positions. And you can do the breath of putting the tongue on the roof of your mouth, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the back of the throat, because honestly, that by itself will also activate the vagus nerve. Bringing the stressor gently to your mind's eye as you focus on it and you continue to breathe. And you could stay there as long as you needed to. So you can go back to this anytime. You can also do this trying to fall asleep at night. It's easy to use for that as well. And then I want you to take your left hand and just gently bring it over your chest. This is our heart chakra, the fourth chakra. It's where your heart organ and the lungs reside. And we're going to be exploring this more later, but it's a great place to tap into love, compassion, and that positive energy, that love energy. So let's just continue with our breath. And I'm going to bring in some sound healing here. You can join me or you can just enjoy. Now, just bring both hands over your heart chakra and really focus on something positive, something that excites you, that brings joy to your heart, and really feel yourself bringing that right into this heart chakra. The more you can do that and spend time doing that, that will bring your stress level down more and more and will be very supportive of your vagus nerve.
Beautiful. Well, I love the introduction of a little bit of singing there too, or sort of toning in order to activate. How does the toning help to activate different energetic pathways?
Well, I mentioned that the vagus nerve passes right through the throat, and it goes to the vocal cords. So some of the noted, if people have studied anything about the vagus nerve from polyvagal theory and from psychotherapy, they would have seen suggestions like humming or gargling because you want to activate where the vagus nerve passes through. So singing, toning, all of that will activate and support. You can do it that just by itself. For me, the tones are frequencies that I hear. So when I'm working with people, I see energy, I feel energy, I get insights and knowing, but I hear tonal frequencies. So depending on the person, what's going on for them, and what system I'm working on as I'm moving through their body, the frequencies change and they're unique to them. In a class, it's about the combination of the tones that I hear for the class or tuning into the technique that I'm doing. So it's all always different and it's all unique, but just doing that piece will talk to the vagus nerve.
Fascinating. Well, that's a great practice that we can all bring with us. And so I know you also wanted to do something called the Peacemaker as well. So why don't you give us a little bit of context about what the Peacemaker is, and then we can tee that up.
Yes. So a number of years ago, I was working with a patient remotely, and there were some things I just kept seeing, and I was trying to figure out how do we support this situation, this scenario. And I naturally instructed them to do what we did with our right hand. So you take the middle finger, tuck it in behind the earlobe, but you do the same thing on both sides. We're going to go to left middle finger behind the left earlobe, and see what we're doing here. We're covering the jaw, the lower facial muscles. We're behind the ear. We're in front of the ear. We're along the throat. We are along the entire beginning gateway, the avenue that the vagus nerve travels. And so I had the person just bring the base of their palms together and focus on the breath. And we're going to do that, all of us together. So looks like this. And then we're tucking in. And take a few deep breaths. You can use that same breathing that we just did. I'm going to do that. And then I'm also going to do some toning. And really allow yourself to sink into this. This was the first really specific vagus nerve technique that I came up with. And it's just powerful. I just use it with every single person every single day. So I absolutely wanted to share it with every one of you. So here we go. And you can see where the sides of my fingers are, the SCM muscle, the muscle on the side of your throat. The vagus nerve travels right along that. So we're covering a lot of territory there. You might find yourself doing ah, and that may be comforting and feel good for you. Ah, opening up the back of the throat. Couple of deep breaths. And again, you can bring your hands down over the heart chakra if you like. And just let it resonate as you feel it going through every cell in your body, resonating, following that vagus nerve as it wanders around and back up again to the brain.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that practice. So you call that the Peacemaker. So why do you call it the Peacemaker?
Well, actually, many of my techniques, the names come from patients. When something comes up and I see this and we put something together and they try it and then they tell me their experience. So the person that this came about with, afterwards, she was so relaxed and so calm that she could hardly speak. And so I asked her, how did you feel? And she said, I just felt this peace rushing over me. Like everything that had been stressed for me just went away. And I said, well, what would you like to call this technique? And she said, the Peacemaker. It makes me really come back to myself, to my center, and find that place of peace.
Beautiful. So do you have any recommendations on how often to do that or when to do that in terms of like really restoring that sense of peace in the whole loop of your vagus nerve?
Yes, that's a great question. So, with any technique, use it as you need it. So, if there's something coming up, try a technique that may be the right one. It may not be the right one. So, you can give it a go. Try something else if it's not shifting fairly quickly. But with these two techniques I just shared with you, actually, you can't overdo it. So, if you're in a really high stress, full on parasympathetic fight or flight, throughout the day, as you can, find time and space to bring yourself back to center and begin to talk to and really support the vagus nerve and allow it to turn on and activate to fully focus on bringing healing for you. If you were just looking for a general measure, you could certainly do it once a day, and that would be great. And some people might find they want to do it, a couple of times, 2 or 3 times in the course of their day, and that's okay too.
Hmm. Super helpful, very useful. So I wanted to just spend a little bit more time. I know we've addressed it a little bit, but just about how the vagus nerve works in sort of with the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Just help to understand how those all links together to create the sort of the core patterns of how we react to the world.
So our nervous system is complex. There are lots of parts to it. But what will happen is right now, what we're focusing on is what's considered the autonomic nervous system. And that literally is two branches. It's the fight or flight response, and that's the sympathetic. And then we have the parasympathetic, which is the rest, restore, relax, digest. So the vagus nerve and the cranial nerve is completely associated with the parasympathetic in its function and restoration. When one's in a sympathetic mode, the vagus nerve completely just begins to get shut down more and more and more. And so it's about, again, bringing balance to those two places. And don't let the names fool you. Just think about this is high stress and this is restorative. That's really, and the vagus nerve is going to help support you in that restorative place.
Great, Melanie. Well, super illuminating practices and insights. And I'd love to maybe just next ground us a little bit more in some specific case studies so people really get a sense for why working with the vagus system can be so powerful in really changing the whole fabric of someone's life.
Well, I tell you what, it's interesting how almost everyone that I work with, I've been in practice now for 25 years, so I've worked with a lot of people. It's interesting how the vagus nerve is involved in almost every single person that I work with. So if the scenario is a person has a eating disorder or they have allergens to foods. I've had cases where someone was so reactive to foods that their diet literally is just a handful of a few things because everything becomes reactive for them. Well, you focus there, you begin there, and you start to energy test foods. You see what systems are out, you balance. You certainly balance the vagus nerve with the gut, the microbiome. We're going to do that in our upcoming class. But what happens is it's also about taking it back further, balancing the nervous system. What am I finding with that? My big takeaway with everyone I work with, privately one-on-one, is I'm all about identifying underlying emotions to whatever it is that's on their paperwork or that they share. The faster we can get to that place and begin to peel the layers of those emotional stressors back, then we can start to have some progress in balancing the energy and making shifts. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because it's something that they've been dealing with their whole life that just has compounded. So I've had people literally that I've worked with. I had a woman that, because of an autoimmune illness, she really wasn't able to go to school. She was a teenager, and she also had severe seizures and unexplained as to why or when they would come along. And I would work on her and work the vagus nerve and balance the brain. And also, she was sensitive to lots of foods. So I would energy test and start to balance whatever was out: stomach, spleen, liver, large intestine, small intestine. I would look to find out, where does the vagus nerve need most of its support? Do I need to tie it in with the chakra system? Do I need to tie it in with the radiant circuits? Do I need to tie it in with the gut health? I've had people where, again, they've been in shock and trauma, that they've endured so much that that's just their norm. They don't even realize they're in that place. So same type of thing. It's energy testing, peeling back, balancing what we find, always clearing emotions, always going deeper. And many times a stressor will come up that someone has an aha, like, oh my gosh, I have a food addiction, and I've had an addiction to sugar since I was a small child. And guess what? I'm realizing my mother had the same thing. My brother has the same thing. I'm realizing it now became an ancestral thing, and it's being passed along through the lineage. That is the stress response loop and this reward mechanism for food, and especially sugar. And then everything else shut down, not getting normal natural rewards of a hug or a touch or a, hey, congratulations on a good grade at school. So it's really identifying trauma, stress, clearing emotions, energy testing and seeing what systems are out, and really just beginning to track it and balance it and keep balancing it till we get something that begins to hold and shift and becomes more stable. All of these tools will work for a lot of different things. And the great thing about self-care is you try it and see how it works. It might not be the right tool for the right time or the right thing, but you'll have other choices along the way. And I'll guide you through how to use it, work with it with different systems along the way.
Great. Well, Melanie, you're a fountain of great information. So I think now would be a great time to talk more explicitly about your upcoming program. And really, since what we're committed to is that people that you are watching get the most benefit from these programs. And so it's not just about a little bit of inspiration, it's really about practices that change your life for the long haul. So Melanie's going to be teaching a program. It's called Tap Into Your Vagus Nerve's Healing Power to Rewire Your Nervous System for Optimal Health. Energy medicine to restore your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. You can find this program laid out in detail at rewireyournervoussystem.com, rewireyournervoussystem.com. It's going to be a 7-week program. There's no prerequisites for this. You don't need to be an expert. It's really about whether you feel a tug to learn more from this top expert in energy medicine technology. So again, you can see the page laid out in detail at rewireyournervoussystem.com. And Melanie, I'd love for you to first of all start with just depicting on a high level, why take this journey? What's the benefit of learning all these practices, so that how does somebody's life shift as a result of taking this journey?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I so hope each and every one of you take this journey with me. I'm so excited to share this and to lay it out and unfold it in such a way that it will be nuggets that you'll be able to absorb. You'll be able to go back to and refresh and be with them. You'll have exercises. You'll have some support and help. And it's important because, again, I don't know of anything more important for our time right now. And this pandemic is not over. Who knows how long it's going to last. So even if it's just for that, to bring you peace of mind of the shifts and changes that you've gone through in the past year and a half in your life and your family's life. But maybe it speaks to you because you're dealing with some of the things that I've mentioned, and your health could use some support, and you'd like to feel empowered to have some exercises that you can use and that someone can step you through and sequence it. You can get things from reading a book, but it's very different when you get, some one-on-one information and you get the visual presentation of that. We're going to have handouts. We're going to have exercises in every class. You're going to be seeing PowerPoints and images. So I like to bring a lot of research in and a lot of information and interweave it to a place that is easy to understand, that you can easily digest, and that you can use. Like every class, there will be takeaways that you can use right away.
Fantastic. Well, let's give a tour of the specific modules you're going to be teaching. And again, this is there. You can see more detail on the page at rewireyournervoussystem.com. So module 1 is on how the vagus nerve impacts your health and vitality.
Yes, and I love that rewire your nervous system, because that's really what we're going to be, that's our end goal, is getting things balanced here. So we're rewiring. So in the first module, I'm going to go deeper with some of the things I've touched on. You're going to have visuals of where is the vagus nerve? What is the vagus nerve? Why is it important? Why should I know about it? So you'll get the anatomy component, the physiology component. And for me, that's always a great place to start. And from that, we're going to look at where it travels, what it's connecting with, why along its way would that create some havoc for you? Why would that be part of something to look at if my issues in my lower gut? How does that even make sense? So I want to clarify that and show you that process, that magic as it weaves through. I'm going to get more detailed, obviously, than we have today about the parts of the nervous system. So you get a full visual as where does that fit and what is it about when we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. We're going to also do a Japanese energy healing technique that I like to present and start classes off with. It talks to lots of systems and organs. It's very balancing. So we'll be working with energy in a variety of ways, including the breath, including toning and sound healing. In class 1, I really want the takeaway to be that you can begin to see the uniqueness of the vagus nerve and the far-reaching abilities that it has and the magic, and how to recognize that, oh, you know what? I'm not sleeping well, or I'm stressed, to the max. How can I bring something in to support me with something that's going on for you specifically?
Great. And then module 2 is on identifying and resetting your stress patterns by working with the vagus nerve.
Yes. And so I've touched on today about stress in a few different ways, but it is the foundational piece. So it's getting an entire module. So we're going to do a lot of different techniques that you can use at any point in time when you're stressed. So some of them are less obvious, so you can do them out in public, and others might be more obvious and you want to do them at home. But I want to share a variety of them so you'll be able to feel like, oh, you know what? I'm at a parent-teacher conference and I'm really feeling, this is not going well for me and my child, or I'm out on the street and this is what's starting to happen out here, or this is my health history and I really need some support. So we're going to look at deeper that whole neurological piece and the stress response loop. The other thing we're going to look at is, when you are under stress for a very long time, lots of things become dysregulated. Hormones become dysregulated. And oxytocin, that feel-good love cuddle hormone, becomes dysregulated. Our adrenals, they release so much adrenaline, and then we have cortisol, the stress hormone. So it's about bringing things to balance so we're not out of balance hormonally. We're not out of balance with our immune system. We're not out of balance with our digestive system. And when we are under ongoing chronic stress, you can guarantee there's going to be disease. So it's about how to start to identify, unlock, and begin to unwind so that we can bring you back to a place of feeling healthy and happy.
Module 3 is on balancing your chakra energy centers with your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes, this is one of my most favorites. I'm not aware of anyone working with the vagus nerve in association to the chakras. Chakras are an energy system all their own. It comes from Eastern Ayurvedic tradition. If you've studied yoga, you maybe have heard chakras. If you've studied energy work, energy medicine, you've most likely heard about chakras. But if you haven't, in this module, I'm going to identify each of the chakras, the locations, the organs and glands that reside in those chakras, some function of each of those chakras. But the interesting thing is the vagus nerve, as it wanders around and connects into each of the organs and the glands, it's passing through every one of your chakras. So it's another layer, it's a deeper layer. I'm also going to bring in working with figure eight patterns. We have figure eight patterns in our DNA. When you think about a double helix strand of DNA, it's a chain of figure eights. We have that in every cell of our being. I want to weave that in every possible way that we can, because it amplifies the healing. It fortifies whatever work that we're doing. And of course, in this particular module, we're going to have a meditative exercise where I will take you through a meditation of connecting the vagus nerve into every chakra, and we'll be doing it with sound healing. And so you can choose to join with the sound or just absorb it. And with the chakras, the throat chakra, I mentioned vagus nerve comes out here at the throat chakra, but the throat chakra is unique and different than any of your other chakras. The thyroid gland sits in the middle of that. It's about regulating metabolism. There are channels here that run up and down to connect the chakras together, like little elevators. And if they're not working properly, guess what? They're not communicating well amongst themselves. Well, the vagus nerve also cannot get communication signals if that's all blocked. So we'll be looking at metabolic function that happens in the throat chakra, and metabolic function also directly correlates with the vagus nerve and gut health. So it's going to be a really fun class. Hopefully some of the things from that will help you to find, like, speak your truth and find your voice and look at where are your vulnerabilities, and to be able to identify those so you can then have homework. Practice and work with fortifying. Maybe it's all the chakras, maybe it's just one or two. And so it's going to be great fun. Can't wait.
Great. Module 4, moving lymph and releasing toxins to support your vagus nerve.
Yes. So this is an important part in working with the vagus nerve, and it's one that I'm not sure that I know of anyone else that's looking at it from this perspective. There are lots of gateways, ways to move the lymph. Lymph is something that supports our immune system. Like, the thing you might most understand is if you have a sore throat, you have swollen lymph glands here, they'll check for that. And that means your immune system's compromised. Well, the truth is we have lymph glands all through our entire body. It's a system all of itself. It's there to support our immune function. And it doesn't have a pump like the heart and the circulatory system. So it only moves when we're physically moving or when we do something to move it. So we're going to talk about different gateways or reflex areas that we can work with to help support and move it. And they're each associated with an organ and an organ system. But we're also going to begin, did you know that you have lymphatics in your head, in your brain? It's actually called lymphatics. And so we've got to start there. We have to start there, and we have to open up again. The throat area is hugely important. A lot of lymph gets stuck here, never makes its way to communicate up and down. So we're going to be working head to toe. When we move chi and blood, we move lymph. When we move lymph, we're moving chi and blood. They all tie together from an Oriental medicine perspective. And so we're going to be looking at how to support that and to get that flow so that, again, it's all about that signal from the brain to the body, to the gut, back up to the brain. And detoxing is important. The vagus nerve runs along very closely to where the lymphatic channels reside. So they go hand in hand, and working the lymph will help to pump energy along the vagus nerve as well. And the more we can detox, the more we can support and promote healing as well. So it's important to get our immune system strong and to get the vagus nerve supported, our gut health, et cetera, is to detox in an easy way, a step-by-step way.
So module 5, activating positive emotional states by working with the radiant energies of the vagus nerve. That sounds really interesting and novel.
Yes, it is. And I think I'm the first one to look at it this way. In Oriental medicine, we have something called the extraordinary meridians. And sometimes they're referred to as the strange flows or the joy generators. In the energy medicine community, you may know them as the radiant circuits. They're radiant energies, but they're the first energies we come into this world with as a fetus, as an embryo. That's what is developed before meridians, before other energy systems. And so looking at the vagus nerve, I feel like it's a radiant circuit. It has functions of a radiant circuit. It sits between and communicates, I believe, between the radiant circuits and the meridians. And so we're going to activate it. When our radiant circuit is activated, through the vagus nerve, it carries oxytocin. Again, it's that feel good love hormone. And so getting the vagus nerve so it's moving easily, traveling to wherever it's needed, all of that is about activating the radiance of it. So we're going to have a number of exercises. And again, we're going to do a meditation in this class as well of connecting into the radiance circuit of the vagus nerve into all the organs and the glands, and focusing on igniting your joy and your peace and harmony and bringing health.
Module 6 is on working with the vagus nerve to support your gut health.
This is one of my favorite topics, and working with immune function, autoimmune. I can't do it without looking at the microbiome, at someone's gut. You know, is there a bacterial imbalance? Is there a viral component? Candida, H. pylori, SIBO, you've heard a lot of terms. It all means there's some kind of chaos going on in the gut. Well, I've already shared with you the vagus nerve innervates every single organ. So when we look at our digestive process, let's get the vagus nerve involved to balance the organs, to improve the digestive function. And we're going to do that through a gateway that I use to the microbiome. And again, it's that loop, that connection of fortifying immune, getting the loop going down into the body. If the gut health is strong, we're going to get a good signal back. We're going to get good neurotransmitter feeds up to the brain. And we're going to be happy. We're going to be healthy, and we're going to have a strong immune system.
Great. And finally, we close it out with applying vagus nerve exercises to daily life.
Yes. So this class is a little bit of what I call dealer's choice, because as we go through the previous 6 weeks, I want to see what's coming up with your comments and your feedback, what you're experiencing in life, in real life. And I'll bring some of those pieces into this class. But we're going to dive deeper into the vagus nerve and how it may be dysregulating heart rate, the heart rate variability, about the breathing. So some energy exercises if you have shortness of breath or asthma or COPD. What can we do to support that? We're going to be looking at, things to support ears and TMJ. So I'm going to kind of mix it up and see, based on what you guys come up with, is going to be a little bit more of what I'm going to tailor this particular module to, and we'll have specific exercises. And in this class, you'll get access actually to an entire vagus nerve sleep protocol, which is getting great accolades, by the way. So sleep is important. If we're not sleeping well, then our immune system is compromised and everything else just trickles down from there. So I'm all about the sleep. So this is going to be a fun class, and it's going to be kind of bringing things together. It will also include exercises.
You would definitely be popular around our house. We're big on sleep as well. So what a great program. I love all the practices you have and the benefits. And so I'll share a little bit more about it. Again, you can find all the details at the URL rewireyournervoussystem.com. So not only do you get the 7 live modules with Melanie, you also get video and audio recordings of every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts, which really allows you to go back, listen to any pieces that you missed, and really make sure you've anchored these deep practices in your own life. So there's also a Facebook learning community, Q&A time, there's breakout groups. There's also a number of great bonuses as well. You can see those listed in the page with more detail, but there's exploring the energetics of the vagus nerve, and that's with Melanie in dialogue with Donna Eden herself, the founder of the energy medicine work. There's a Boost Your Brain Power with Energy Medicine. That's a dialogue with Melanie and Dondi Dahlin, who hosts our Energy Medicine Summit. There's a video dialogue between Melanie and Vicki Matthews, balancing the vagus nerve using the Chinese 5 elements. There's a bonus called Energy Medicine and the Vagus Nerve for Animals. That's really intriguing, with Melanie and Madison King. So obviously, this is a deep part of our nervous system, impact in other mammals as well. So those are all the bonuses you get just regardless of when you sign up. And there's a special bonus of our 5 most popular sessions from a recent Energy Medicine and Healing Summit when you sign up by midnight tonight.
That's one of our most popular summits, really valuable insights and practices from some of the foremost teachers on energy medicine.
So again, you can see all the details at rewireyournervoussystem.com. A few other things. We've kept the investment in this program really accessible. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you save 10% when you pay in full up front with one payment of $297. So the course is going to start on January 3rd, and it's going to run Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 Eastern. But even if you can't make that live time, you can still get the full value by participating with the recordings and in the community, and also just really adding this to your transformational library for years to come. So I particularly encourage you to go to the page at rewireyournervoussystem.com, read through the testimonials. That's really the best way to see the fruits of a particular body of work. And Melanie has some great testimonials from people who have really benefited from this work. And there's a practical application of energy medicine insights in a way that really rewires your physical body in a beautiful way as well. So you're in for a treat and in good hands if you choose to go further. So again, you can do so at rewireyournervoussystem.com. So Melanie, we're just a couple minutes left. I know you still had one more thing that you wanted to show people, a little practice who are considering going further.
Yes, I wanted to just give everyone an opportunity to kind of come in and center and ground yourselves and be with what we've shared and talked about today, and to just go inside and touch into how this work might support you and help take you to a new level, a next level in your own healing journey. And so I'd like to do that by just having you bring some energy into your hands, and then just reach up to the heavens and look up to the heavens and pull all that energy down as much. It's infinite, as much energy as you need, as much insight and support as you need, in helping you to determine how this work is going to best support you. And then bring that energy right down into your heart space. And I just want you to feel that. I'm sending lots of love out to you. I'm going to send you some hearts, tracing some hearts and some figure eights that I so really would love to see you and to have you join me. So be well within.
Well, thank you, Melanie. You are just a very bright light, and your passion for this work clearly shines through. And thank you for sharing so much wisdom with us today. Thank you all for joining, and look forward to seeing many of you in the program. You can get signed up right away at rewireyournervoussystem.com, and you get the extra special bonus when you do so today. So thank you all. Many blessings.